Good evening and welcome to Cohoes City School District Board of Education reorganization meeting. Today, July 5th, meeting is called to order at 6:02 p.m. The fire exits, the same door that you came in, and these on the side. We will go downstairs and meet directly out front. Please rise and join me for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to our district clerk, Mrs. Rumsey.
Good evening, everyone. Let's do a roll call. Mrs. Giller?
Here.
Mr. Jackson?
Here.
Ms. Carey? Here. Mr. Snyder?
Here.
Mrs. Gendron?
Excused.
Ms. Paradis?
Here.
Mr. Giroux?
Here.
At this time, I'm opening the floor for nominations for the President of the Board of Education for the 23-24 school year. Can I please have a motion to open the floor?
I'll make the motion to open the floor.
I'll second.
Mrs. Giller?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Ms. Carey?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
Paradis?
Yes.
Mr. Giroux?
Yes.
The floor is now open for nominations for the President of the Board of Education for the 23-24 school year. Do I have a nomination?
I'd like to nominate Nadia Carey.
Jackson, Mrs. Carey. Are there any other nominations?
I'm going to nominate Mrs. Giller.
Fergus? Yes. Any others? If there are no other nominations for the office of president, I will close the floor. Do I have a motion to close the floor? Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay. So we are going to take a roll call for Mrs. Carey. So I need board members to say yay or nay. Mrs. Giller,
Yay.
Mr. Jackson,
Yay.
Mrs. Carey,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder. Yay. Ms. Paradis,
Nay.
Mr. Giroux.
Yay.
Okay. So I believe that Mrs. Carey has 5 votes. I don't believe I need to proceed, correct? Okay. So I need a motion that Mrs. Carey be elected president to the Board of Education for the 23-24 school year. I need a motion.
Make a motion.
Mrs. Giller, and a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Giroux, okay? Mrs. Giller. We have to do another roll call. There's a lot of roll calls. Mr. Jackson,
Still here.
Mrs. Carey,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder,
Yes.
Ms. Paradis,
Yes.
Mr. Giroux.
Yes.
Mrs. Carey, I'm gonna come over to you. And we are going to administer your oath. Here. And we're just gonna raise your right hand and read the following.
I, Nadia Carey, do solemnly swear, Mrs. Rumsey, with that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of President of the Board of Education for the 2023-2024 school year according to the best of my ability.
Please sign your name. So much. Mrs. Carey, at this point, you take over the meeting so we can do nominations for vice president.
Thank you, everyone. Can I please get a motion to open the floor for nominations for the office of Vice President of the Board of Education for the 23-24 school year?
Second.
Mrs. Giller,
Yes.
Mr. Jackson,
Yes.
Mrs. Carey,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder. Yes. Meredith,
Yes.
DeRose.
Yes.
Floor is now open for nominations for vice president of the board. Do I have a nomination?
I'd like to. Mrs. Carey. I'm sorry,
I'd like to nominate Mrs. Giller.
Second.
okay. Are there any others?
I'm happy to nominate Mr. Jackson.
Mrs. Giller. Nominates Mr. Jackson. Okay,
Any other nominations? Can I have a motion to close the floor for nominations?
Make the motion.
Second.
okay, so we are going to vote for Mrs. Giller. Mrs. Giller,
Nay.
Mr. Jackson,
Yay.
Mrs. Carey,
Yay.
Mrs. Snyder,
Yay.
Ms. Paradis.
Yes.
Mr. DeRose.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So again, if I'm correct, we don't have to vote, correct?
So with that vote, Mrs. Giller has been elected the vice president of the board.
Thank you.
Mrs. Rumsey, will you administer the oath?
We need a second and we need a motion.
Can we just make it so? Troublemaker. I thought, okay, can I get a motion that Mrs. Giller is elected the vice
Yes.
president of the board?
I'll make the motion.
Perfect. Second, anyone?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Mrs. Giller,
Yes.
Mr. Jackson.
Yes.
Mrs. Carey.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes.
Paradis.
Yes.
Mr. DeRose.
Yes.
Mrs. Rumsey, would you administer the oath?
I would love to. Raise your right hand and start right there.
Okay. I, Margaret Giller, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of Vice President of the Board of Education for the 2023-24 school year.
No.
Thank you.
Say it doesn't.
Ready, Mrs. Rumsey?
I am.
May I please have a motion that the Board of Education appoints Mary Rumsey to the position of district clerk for the 23-24 school year?
Make a motion?
I will second.
Mrs. Snyder. Mrs. Giller.
Yes.
Mr. Jackson.
Yes.
Mrs. Carey.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes.
Paradis.
Yes.
Mr. DeRose.
Yes.
Oh,
Mrs. Rumsey, will you raise your right hand? Read this.
I, Mary Rumsey, do solemnly swear I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York. And I will faithfully discharge the duties of the district clerk for the Board of Education for the 23-24 school year according to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Congratulations on your appointment.
Oh, thank you.
You can rest now, listen for a moment.
Got our steps in.
This becomes,
Ms. O'Shea, do you want to go through the reorg agenda? You want,
Doing reorg agenda. and then.
Yeah. This is for the reorg agenda.
What she's. We'll do the reorg agenda and we'll do the code of, right? No,
Do you want to go through the
Do you wanna go
reorg, do you want to mention
through it.
several the appointments and?
Sure. So you'll see later on the business agenda that we'll be appointing Michael Cohn. So he is on this agenda as deputy treasurer from July 10th through July 31st, and then treasurer from August 1st through June 30th. Once Pam Quincy officially retires, so that's why that is changed a bit. He's also going to take on the role of central treasurer, tax collector. And then as you go through, Shelley Dane, she's also on the business agenda, meeting agenda as the purchasing agent. She starts in July as well. Stacy will now become the deputy purchasing agent. We don't need to change the dates for this one because the deputy can do what the purchasing agent does, which is why we just put 23, 24 for both. And then most of these other appointments are continuous. Right now for the Dignity Act coordinators, we don't have an assistant principal. We're in the hiring process. So as soon as that person is hired, they will go on the agenda. And then the board meeting dates are something to make sure of, and will be just trying to think if there's other items that you have questions. There's a few changes in pay for substitutes. And Stacy, if I'm correct, that starts at the 2-year degree, or matriculating college junior or senior level. As you can recall, we had the discussion about minimum wage and the increase, and that's impacted a number of these positions. And then Stacy, we will likely, or we will have to increase again in January, correct?
Yeah.
And then that will be next year because of the increase in minimum wage for January. So any other?
And that notification has come out, Ms. Mackey, for what that will be in January? Still waiting.
Still waiting.
Okay,
So this year we made changes and we just reflected back to this agenda and said,
gotcha. Okay,
due to the increase in minimum wage.
okay. Sorry. I was reading into it.
So I think other than that, unless are there any questions?
Anyone? No. Any community discussion of reorganization agenda items? Please use your outside voice so I can hear you. So the official undertaking bonds,
We
It's blanket
updated it.
coverage for our insurance. Our insurance blanket covers, it's basically fraud protection
Got
for
it.
folks that are authorized signers.
perfect. Okay. All right, so can I get a motion that the Board of Education adopts the following resolutions of the July 6, 2023 reorganization agenda? Items 6A, 1 through 26, B, 1 through 19, C, 1 through 10, and 7A.
Make a motion.
Mrs. Carey,
Yes.
Mr. Jackson,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder,
Yes.
Ms. Paredes,
Yes.
Mr. DeRose,
Yes.
Mrs. Giller.
Yes.
Any comments from board members on reorganization?
Just want to thank Mary. A lot of time and effort put into this.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Seems the audience. Again, outside voice. All right, with that, I would like to adjourn the reorganization meeting at 6:17 PM and enter into our regular business meeting. Can I get a motion to do so?
I'll motion.
Second, anyone? I'll second.
Mrs. Carey,
Yes.
Mr. Jackson,
Yes.
Snyder.
Yes.
Ms. Paredes,
Yes.
Mr. Rose,
Yes.
Mrs. Geller.
Yes.
Right along. We have to do all the same stuff again?
We're gonna do,
You can just
start with,
call the meeting to order.
meeting and then code of conduct. public vote.
So I'd like to call the regular business meeting to order at 6:17 PM.
Mrs. Carey,
Yeah, here.
Mr. Jackson.
Here.
Snyder.
Here.
Ms. Paredes,
Here.
Mr. Rose.
Here.
Geller.
I'm here.
So shy.
Thank you. So tonight, we're going to start by going over the recommendations for changes on the district code of conduct. So the draft will be posted on our website for a 30-day public comment period. And then it'll be on an August board agenda for adoption. And as we go through the code and the questions and comments this evening, we can get a better understanding of which August board meeting that might be. The final version will be shared with all staff and given to new staff upon hire. And then we always provide, as required, a plain language summary code to parents and guardians, and then an age-appropriate plain language summary for students for the start of the school year. And as we go through, we will share those as well. And then the code, the changes will be reviewed with staff at opening staff meetings. Then the new professionals will hear more about the code at their new professional orientation meeting. And then students during assemblies, this all depends on grade level. So for example, at the high school, they have grade level assemblies, and in elementary, it would be in the kindergarten classrooms, in the third grade classrooms, et cetera. It's shared at the beginning of the year. Any questions about that?
Can you just, what is the age appropriate breakdown? Like how many versions of the plain language age appropriate will be out?
There will,
Distributed?
yeah, so there'll definitely be a secondary and an elementary, but I think we need to work on making it even more fine-tuned than that. So a younger elementary version, primary, and then intermediate, and then secondary. Okay.
I know there was some concern at the middle level that may not equate to a secondary,
Right. So, and then as we go through the process, because this is very specific, although every level has a handbook, the specific age-appropriate summary hasn't been, plain language hasn't been that fine-tuned before. So then as we start to develop that, we might need to, add another layer or something like that. But we'll work through that, and maybe we can even student test.
So the kids are gonna get, they're gonna get the expectations communicated directly by the adults in their building.
Mhm.
So that will be done in an age appropriate way.
Yeah.
We're gonna have all the versions of plain language available on the website, so if one, if it's not one size fits all, they can
Yeah, well-
adjust as needed.
So we have to have the full code available. We'll have all the plain language available. And we'll also be utilizing Parent Square for, plain language summaries.
Thank you.
So just some changes throughout, and I think as we go through the year too, I would like to even develop this further, especially as we work with staff in the buildings on some in-service trainings and providing some alternatives. But we want to make sure, and it's reflected this year to include language, that discipline should help students learn and grow from their mistakes. And I think that's something that we can continue to develop. So as we went through, there's some language that's included in the Dignity for All Students Act that needed to be incorporated and clarified. And then some wording throughout the document, shall to will or must, him or her to their. So if you look, this is broken down into a number of areas in the code. And so what I've done is just taken each area and gone over just some of the changes in the area. So for example, in the introduction, if you looked at it, we had a lot of language that was repeated later throughout the code. And we also said everything that needed to be in the code, and then we put everything that needed to be in the code. So the recommendation is to remove that to make it easier to, go right in and to read the code. So definitions, alphabetize the definitions, and also remove some definitions that are later fully explained in text. The definitions are supposed to be for things that might not be explained later, but just for a common understanding as you go through. So students' rights and responsibilities, and then essential partners. So we added some language in the students' rights and responsibilities. And I can just, and I know you have the copy, and by the way, your new copy is free of typos and aligned, although we are working on the website. It's a continuous version, not the 2-column. Mrs. Rumsey's working to convert this document to a continuous version. This is very difficult to read. So because we have to have print copies available when it's time for them to be available. They'll be easier to read. Plus I messed up all her margins, sorry. So one of the items under student rights that was added is to be respected as an individual and treated fairly and with dignity by other students and school staff. And then one of the responsibilities, well, we added some responsibilities, but some of the things that we've heard about this year, so respecting personal space, working to develop skills to manage emotions and reactions and resolve conflict with others. So to make sure that that's included in here. And when students are met with, and this has gone over, yes, it's, I think it also needs to be continued to be, referred to and gone over throughout the year. And we can talk about that too, because really, if you look at it, many of these are embedded in our social emotional learning curriculum, and that's a perfect opportunity to then go back in and tie in the code of conduct. And so we can work on that. So with parents, we also added some language with teachers and other instructional staff, with administrators. One thing that we noticed was missing throughout was to maintain confidentiality and conformity with state and federal law. So with all of the information surrounding FERPA and Ed Law 2D and all of that, we made sure to include that. We added promote a trauma responsive approach to addressing student behavior. That is something that we have been working towards. We thought it was important to put it in the code. One thing that was missing was the Dignity Act section of the code where it clearly said who the Dignity Act coordinators are. So that is now added. If in the future there are no changes year to year in the code, only the Dignity Act coordinator, that doesn't constitute the need for a hearing. We can change that portion without. We began to look at some of the other rights and responsibilities with administrators. As you may see, there's some with Board of Education too. I think this can be an ongoing, looking at that, see if it reflects today, because none of these have been changed in a while. So that can continue to be a work in progress. So in the student dress code, we did include language. A recommendation is to include language to ensure it's in line with recent Dignity for All Student Act language, but also to to talk about the process if a student is addressed in terms of a dress code violation. Do you want me to pause after each slide for questions, or you'll just stop me if you have questions?
I think we can just stop you. If we have-
Stop me if you have questions. If not, I'll be on a roll. So with prohibited student conduct, so there's various areas that each of this conduct falls under. In going through it, we realized that some of the areas weren't really clearly defined. So for example, what does insubordinate actually mean, you know, and for a student, or what does it mean? So we put language in to help with a common understanding. There are a few areas that were highlighted in yellow that our attorneys are still reviewing. We wanted to make sure that the cannabis and cannabis products was clear in the code because of some of the changes recently in law. And we also really wanted to make sure, and that's something we might want to look at again to make sure it's even more clear about the use of cell phones as it pertains to, you know, not using them in a manner that's not prescribed by the district. And so we went through that. So in terms of reporting violations, there's some minor language changes. We did add a paragraph regarding restorative practices, and that's something we want to continue to develop and refine, and then work together on that as we go into next year's code of conduct together in terms of what that should look like. So disciplinary consequences, procedures, and referrals. Again, some just minor language changes, and then a paragraph regarding the expectation to maintain academic progress during periods of suspensions. And again, any of these items as we go through, we can discuss. And then there's changes in PIN's petition to reflect state law. So we changed that in here as we go forward. Discipline of students with disabilities, a minor change, but in many places it said Office of Special Programs. It's really the Committee on Special Education, the CSE, the full committee that can determine location. And then student searches and interrogations. We did not have anything in here regarding searches of cell phones either. So currently the language that is in here, and it's also a lot of this we double checked with ISBA and other codes. It does clearly say that administration and teachers can take a cell phone, you know, you can confiscate a cell phone, you can search on the front screen with permission. You can go farther, and if you don't receive permission, then to please call me, and if I need to, I will consult with an attorney. So it doesn't mean we can't go further, it just means to just proceed cautiously. So that's a totally new section that wasn't addressed. And the feedback from the secondary administration was they were very happy that was there, and also the word confiscate. So that will help them as well. So Child Protective Services investigation, the language in the code talks about making sure we open up to CPS and do it in a certain manner. That was suggested by NISBA, and in going through and looking at many other codes, it's not in them because it is can be a policy. And it really doesn't have to do with student discipline. I'm just thinking, and I know everything is important, but the more and longer this is, the harder it is to go through. So that's a recommendation, and we can keep it or take it. Public conduct on school property. We didn't have anything in here in terms of smoking, tobacco. We added cannabis, and also really focused on not endangering safety. So we firmed that up a bit to help in terms of visitors. We did make sure in here that the language shows that we want visitors, we are welcoming, we want to be partners in the educational process, but we have to make sure those things are followed. And then finally, dissemination and review, which we spoke about. And
So I just want to ask, there are several places where it, does bring the cannabis and other substances and, like vaping and stuff like that. But then like, there are many sections where it says just if any student observing another student possessing a weapon, alcohol, or illegal substance on school property.
and it doesn't mention that.
And it does not mention cannabis, vaping, anything like that. So there's a couple, and I'm just saying that all needs to be addressed because obviously cannabis isn't illegal anymore.
So
And then,
do a search through this, and so anywhere we'll search, for example, alcohol, and then
yeah,
see that we can then make.
because there's another, it says any weapon, alcohol, or illegal substance found will be confiscated immediately.
We would do illegal substances and controlled substances. There's probably some other places that say that we need to be consistent.
Yeah.
Because cannabis is a controlled substance, no longer an illegal substance. That's probably my suggestion that we would do.
Yeah, just to make sure that it's consistent. No, I know. It was just like some of the things that I was noticing. And there was another, I know I noticed it and I know I can't find it right now. I will email you with it. But there was another thing about like discriminating a child based upon, like in some spots, it does say their hair, jewelry, stuff like that. But then there's other spots where it's not addressed.
Okay.
And so,
Consistently.
yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
I'm very grateful that you took out the redundant language in the beginning, made it daunting and had to get further into what needed to be read. It's really hard to get past that. So, fixing that. Anyone else?
So, 30-day comment period, and we're going to ask people to email Mary Ramsey. Any of you can email me. Anybody can email me. But on the website, it'll say Mary Ramsey. We figured that would be a good way to, have it. And then again, we'll share with you. I don't think, Mary, that we've received comments
we
yet
have not.
about the district safety plan.
We have not.
But just like with the district safety plan, we don't just post this on the web, we send it out through Parent Square too, so parents know that they have, the ability to look. We'll be sharing it up on Parent Square. We'll make sure we click staff too, so that everyone will know that they can comment.
Is there any sort of acknowledgement? Receipt, of understanding? Any of that?
Good question.
Long time ago, we used to collect a signature page, and that was a long time ago. Again, we can go back to that, but we never got them all.
Yeah.
So I know that there is a way that other schools do, like an electronic version of,
Square would allow you to do that.
So we can, when we send it through Parent Square, we'll be able to know that it went through Parent Square and it.
no, it's an actual acknowledgement, like
Yeah. It's
signature type thing.
complete and send it out, and then when they complete it, you're notified of who completed it for which child.
Exactly. And it has a spot for both the parent and the child, if the child, can acknowledge it and stuff like that. And then you can monitor that because it's a way that you can find out that parents have not read it.
Thank you. And I think as we go down the road further with the development of synergy, that's a way that we could get it to the secondary. I don't think we'll be right there.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's similar to doing your physicals for your school forms and stuff like that. You have an acknowledgement that you received the code of conduct, read it, and you agree to its terms and conditions.
So I just have one question related to the code, and this was just brought up at the safety committee meeting, with the limitation on our police department and our law enforcement, folks. We had talked about specifically talking about confiscated either, illegal or controlled substances and how we handle those confiscations, because they're not allowed to, unless it was determined by us that that was our process and procedure. Did you guys have any input on that?
So we have a meeting on it's planned for July 13th with the chief and the secondary administration. We'll have a meeting later with elementary. And so this issues the confiscation of the cannabis, et cetera, and some of the other items is secondary. Right. So we'll include that, so there's clear guidelines in terms of what can be taken and what.
For the remainder of this year, though, they were still really good with us in that we would still call them if we confiscated something, and they would take it and bag it, because, you know, we just didn't want to, like, what do you do with it? We wanted a chain of custody on that, so. I'll work with them to make sure that there's still a good chain of custody, because we don't want to holes with that and allegations or, you know, want it up and out of here.
So it's still new to all of us, right? We're all sort of adjusting together.
Any other questions?
I have a question, just a comment in that, I think there's great work that's being put into this document and for our students, our parents, and all of our families. And we are talking, I think we're putting a lot of effort into this because there are some negative things that happen. But, you know, looking at it, when teachers are sitting down and talking to the students about it as it's passed out and throughout the year, it's always going to get hit on when there's something negative. But is there a way, and I'm throwing this out there because I have no idea, but is there a way to kind of look at some of those positive things and tie it back to the code of conduct, like this is why, like, just so it's not always hammered in a negative way, like the code of conduct? I mean,
I think starting with the students' rights and responsibilities, role, that's positive, and that can, you know, that's one way. And then again, because we are talking more about understanding the consequences of actions and using it as a learning experience, I think that it can also be then referred to later. One of the things, I don't know if it's here, I think it's in what I'm talking about later. You know, we're really going to be talking and trying to come up with clearer plans upon students' reentry too from a suspension, et cetera. So in terms of, okay, it's, yes, that happened. Now, you know, and you've learned, now let's go on. And I think that's another place too.
definitely. Okay.
Okay. So each year around this time, and we ask if you can do this around this time, because these then become part of the framework for our building level plans. We review the mission, the vision, the beliefs and commitments, and you all have a sheet in front of you. As we go through, I have one suggestion, but it's at the very, very end. So I just wanted to have this as an opportunity to just to discuss our mission, our vision, and our beliefs, and see if anyone has any suggestions, any changes. The mission, the partnership with parents in the community to prepare students for success in tomorrow's world. Well,
All good with keeping it that way.
so this is the only slide with pictures, and the reason there's pictures on this slide, a purpose and a plan for all. We really wanted to show that we've really done a lot of different activities and opportunities for students in this area. We're going to continue to grow and expand. So we're still purpose and plan for all. And then the beliefs, any changes or recommendations for the high expectations for all?
No, I think we still like to have high expectations for all.
And then last year, a word was added to this, cooperation, which is even more important this year after some of our discussions. And I think it's important too, when students start, to make sure they understand and know the beliefs and, mission and vision. Okay with this? Future ready knowledge and skills. Any other future ready knowledge or skills? This is good. It just means that you all did a really, really good job. Appreciate that. Oops. Where is the? Oh, we're missing the, efficiency of resources. Stacy just gave me a look. Stacy, it was there earlier. I don't know what happened. I am so sorry. So, we believe in the efficiency of resources, and then the commitment is the district will be innovative in maximizing the efficiency and equity of resources. I'm just wondering if right in the title, because we talked about equity a lot, should it be, we believe in the efficiency and equity of resources?
Yes, I agree. I think that states it as a priority.
So Stacy, even though it didn't get up there,
I
love it.
I got it, Stacy.
okay, all right, thank you. And then, they're not on tonight's agenda, we're going to ask that they be on the August 9th agenda if possible. But we wanted to just spend a couple minutes letting you know of the Board of Education committees and Mr. Giroux. So this, I know everybody's been through a round of this at least or more. So we're going to tailor this to you and see whose committee. We're going to do a game and then see whose committee you're going to join.
Wait, I think you're supposed to say that the newest member of the board has to sit on all the committees.
So I'm going to have Stacy just, and so tonight really, as we go through this, there's really only two committees that I'd like to have a kind of an idea of before we leave, and it doesn't have to be official and approved, but one is the policy committee, because we have a lot of policy work that we're going to continue to do. And then the other is the facilities committee, because we're planning on an August meeting, and it would be good to have everybody's to really work on that date. So, but starting with audit, Stacy.
So the audit committee is a lot of fun. And it meets one to two times a year, depending on what's going on. When we had the OSC audit, we met a little bit more frequently than that. But normally it's 1 to 2 times a year. It is required by law, 2116, Section C. And there is a minimum of 3 members on the committee. And the responsibilities are to recommend the internal and the external auditors, which we'll have to do the RFP this year. So it's every 5 years we do an RFP, and this is the 5th year. So we'll do that process in the spring. Right now we're with Marvin and Company, and our internal auditor is Michael Wolf. The audit committee meets with auditors annually. Usually it's in early October. They meet with the internal auditor, the external auditors. They do a presentation. They go over the recommendations and the management response plans. And they also meet with the claims auditor. And the claims auditor will review his or her process, talk about any special projects that they did throughout the year. And then we'll talk about what we plan to focus on in the upcoming year with both the claims auditor and the internal auditor. The financial audit is pretty scripted, so there's not a lot to talk about as far as planning for that. The audit committee attends those meetings, and then the recommendations are presented. I usually will present them and provide a copy of the report, and then if any of the audit committee members would like to chime in, of course, they always do. There's also a charter, there is a charter, but it basically regurgitates the policy that we have for audit committee. So it discusses those very things that we just talked about. So and again, it's a lot of fun. Any questions on the audit committee?
We really,
Really fun, really fun.
Budget committee is a really good time as well. It's super time intensive. So there's some building blocks happen before we start meeting as a committee. In October, we go over the financial statements. November, we go over the reserves, plans, and where we stand. And then in December, we go over the long-term financial plans, and all of those discussions lead to whatever our budget goals are going to be. And then in January, we really do all of our planning meetings. So in the first couple of weeks of January, it'll be the internal teams meeting with the principals and the directors and our teacher leaders and our BLT teams. That's happened in the first 2 weeks of January. And then in the last 2 weeks of January, there's a Google Doc that's shared with the budget committee members. And it's really 3 days of meetings, and the principals or the directors come in and they go over everything that was presented, and nothing's left out. They also receive copies of return on investments, which typically is anything new that is being added or anything that was flagged that is in the current year budget that we said, all right, we're adding it, but we want to keep an eye on this and make sure that it's working the way that it was pitched, basically. So January, it's a lot of meetings all at once. In February, we start the presentations. We start on the revenue side of the house, and it's preliminary revenues. And we'll take a look at the return on investments and talk about what we will do if there's a gap between how much money we have to spend and what the expenses look like. So if there is a gap, then that requires additional meetings. For the past 2 years, we've been very blessed where we haven't had to do that, but that has happened historically, and those are some really painful meetings. So it can be a little dark. Okay, so that's February. So February and March, then we have the presentations. And there's usually some, sometimes if things are presented, the committee members are able to offer a little bit more as far as detail in the conversations that maybe I might just skate over. So it's really helpful to have the members, and they're able to give great feedback to the full board and to the public. So they're really partners in the process. So it's nice to have it. And then April, the board will take action on approving the budget, and then in May is the public hearing and the vote.
Thank you. Stacey, any questions? So district safety meets at least twice a year, sometimes 3, and if a situation arises, and we have building safety teams at each of the buildings. So on the building's district safety team, there's representatives from the building, the police chief, fire chief, and the mayor. So the diversity, equity, and inclusion that meets 3 times a year, and that goal is making the district a more inclusive, welcoming environment that meets the needs of all students and staff, making them feel safe, supported, and valued, and helping us meet the physical, social, and emotional needs of all students. The facilities committee, I think, usually would meet about 3 times a year, but now meets about 5 and maybe more because of the capital project. So really 4 regular meetings, but there's optional meetings that can be attended if you wish. Now that we're going under some construction too, if there's safety types of conversations, we have to decide if that's going to be district safety or facilities. And we'll fine tune that. And then policy, meets 3 to 4 times a year, and now you heard him once over the summer. And makes recommendations regarding policy revisions, potential new policies, and then you see the policies on the board agenda recommended for approval that flows through the policy committee. And before Dan starts, I know that Dan's going to try to tell you how much fun he is, but I don't know if you can tell, but I'm fun too. Go ahead.
Since I'm on all your committees, yes, I concur that you're fun. The technology committee, we explore 21st century skills. I like that committee because it's micro to macro. We always start with the student, elementary, middle, and high school in the classroom with the teacher, and make sure that we have a good, high quality classroom standard for what kids can use and what teachers can use for and with kids. In addition to that, we do look to the future and the things that we might need to change, how we might use some potential grant funding to make improvements with technology and how our buildings function. That meets 3 times a year. It's October, early December, and April. It could be adjusted, of course, to your schedules. And there's lots of teachers on it. And we usually do those virtually because it's the tech meeting, but we don't have to. The Wellness Committee, and what's nice about the Wellness Committee is it's really changed from what we've done in the past in that we still maintain the focus on nutritional health and we maintain the focus on physical health. But what we've added in the last couple of years is SEL, social emotional learning, and mental health components. And what's nice about those particular meetings is usually people present, the people that do the work on the ground in each of the buildings, whether it's the nurse, Brian Nolan attends, the principals, and it's there that we take policy, but put it into practice. And so you'll often at that committee be able to see what they're really doing in the classroom, and are we doing SEL? How are they doing it? When are they doing it? So that committee, usually works out pretty well. And again, that's 3 times a year: October, November, April.
So we're all on all of the committees.
High quality agendas.
And much more technological agendas. So we're on all of the committees. We chair different committees. I'm asking Rachel Marcel this year to chair the DEI committee. She's on the Capital Region BOE committee. So we'll still be there, but she'll be the chair of that committee.
I just wanted to mention, we had talked about potentials of expanding, or offering a seat for a parent representative, if they're not already in the committee level, so.
Once we'll reach out.
And it may not be appropriate for all of them, but I know that it was a conversation piece for.
Good luck finding that audit.
We do have, as a member of the community, Mr. Neto had said he will continue to serve on the facilities committee. And then I do know that, and we'll reach out again to a couple of parents for some of the other committees. I think it would be good to have. We have a standing parent on the safety committee, but I think that would be good to have another parent on that committee.
I feel like there's a parent on the wellness also.
I mean, also though, I think that when we communicated out to our greater community this year, when we were looking for board candidates, and we had some folks step forward because they received that communication from us, and I know that the city is a totally different entity, but they accept applications for positions.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That it wouldn't hurt us to maybe, have something similar so that we can not only have people who are qualified, but also interested. In
Exactly.
participating.
I love the application thing, because then
I
it
do
gives you
too.
something.
Yeah.
It's not just, I'm going to raise my hand here. They put a little bit more effort into it and understand.
Restriction probably would be for committee, right? Because that's restricted by, like, you have a law that says we have to establish, right?
There has to be 3, but
Right.
at least 3.
But if there's any regulations that would not allow us.
I mean, I don't think on the budget committee, can you allow a parent?
Yeah, you could. It's a lot of time and,
Huge commitment.
yeah.
No, I know, that's the thing, and
So I don't know if to be able to.
that's also part of the,
You're putting it out there.
Yeah.
hey, I mean,
Understand.
they love to complain when their taxes get raised, so why not, you know?
We also, of course, welcome anyone to come and communicate with us during the presentations.
Right,
Talk about the budget from February to May,
absolutely.
so.
So just like on the building level teams, we're trying to encourage parent involvement. We do have some parent involvement on the building facilities committee teams, which then they were invited to the district facilities committee. So that still might be the flow through there
Mm-hmm.
because of that, but then we can discuss.
I just worry that,
Put the application process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just worry that it's like a hand-picked few that are over tapped on the shoulder to, you know, provide input or participate in something where, you know, we're trying to increase engagement, we're trying to increase community, you know, collaboration. And so having, you know, the principal of the building say, hey, you know, you're isolating by their choice, who their choice is, rather than putting out like a qualified candidate petition. They're finding somebody that might not be involved right now, who could be, or might be a good resource.
It's a good point. So once we know who the board members are and we work out also the specific dates too, and then we have that idea, as part of that process, we can definitely share a draft application form. Yeah, Mary Beth.
I just want to clarify one thing. The audit committee, so the audit committee meeting is public and we do advertise it on the website and the agenda is on the website. So that meeting is public, the audit committee meeting.
And then finally, and I think, well, let's go on to this and then Stacy, I'll go back to me.
So we have the 2 retirements in the business office and the district treasurer position. We're welcoming Michael Cohn. So I've been interviewing since April. We've had 3 rounds. We had 20 applicants, 7 withdrew, 5 were actually interviewed, 6 were unqualified, and 2 didn't show up for the interview. So it's been a painful process, but finally we have someone that we're recommending and we're welcoming him. His first day is Monday, July 10th. So very excited about that. And then the purchasing agent position, this had a little bit easier of a time finding a candidate for this one. So started in May, 9 applicants, 1 withdrew, 2 didn't show up for the interview, 6 actually interviewed, and we're welcoming Shelley Dean. And her first day is going to be on a Wednesday, July 19th. So again, looking forward to our 2 new members starting, a meeting with the current sitting district treasurer and our accounts payable clerk tomorrow, actually, to review their transition plans. And then we'll be training and making sure we're dotting all the i's and crossing all the t's. So it'll be a fun summer for the business office, but excited for our new folks and we wanted to welcome them.
New structure, new efficiency. Congratulations on your new team.
Thank you.
So a few things, we, now that the high school has been finalizing, you know, schedules, working through them, there's a need for 2 additional sections, 2 additional resource rooms for special education, because as what's indicated on students' IEPs, during the annual review process, some of these students had not moved in yet. I think I'm looking, because I know Mr. Flannery has spoken with me about it, along with Mrs. Tarlow and Mrs. Hill. So these are needs that have arisen since that time, since budget time. So those would be posted as 2.2s, and in the contract, that's at $9,000 per section. So the 0.2 is typically an existing staff member who then takes an additional section. I just wanted to let you know that. I don't know if you have any questions. If you want to ask, then I can ask Matt, and that would be kind of fun. No?
No pressure.
Okay. Also, I did want to give you a bit of an update. I know that we want to make sure to include climate and culture on our board meeting agendas. And so in August, we'll be sharing data in terms of both academic, behavioral, and then go a little more into some of the survey data side by side. So since, and I shared this in an email, but since we last discussed this, Dan, Rachel, Kyle, Deanna, and I met. And some of the things that they're doing is they're reviewing discipline data, but down to the referral level. And I'll be meeting later this summer, Dan and I, with each of the principals and going through their data. But by looking at the referrals, there's an opportunity to look at, is there an intervention that could occur, look at this trend, do we need to provide more supervision, say in this area? So they can, by looking both at the aggregate level and the internal data, that will help. They talked about having more frequent parent meetings throughout the year, and they're going to be reaching out this summer for a proactive approach with summertime meetings planned for certain students. Really, and a lot of our schools do positive behavior interventions and supports, but really looking at how they're relaunching this in the fall at the middle school. And then really the time students come back from each of our vacations. So at the elementary level, when they come back from a vacation, it's a refresher because those times are crucial to get off to the next best start, right? So they're going to be looking at that with explicit teaching of behavior expectations and modeling. So I know we talked about the in-school support room. I have a draft proposal right now from the middle school, and they have said it is draft. There needs to be more fine tuning. So once it is more fine tuned, but still in draft form, I'll share it with you. And then I mentioned some of these earlier, a review of processes when students return from out of school suspension, revitalization of the instructional support team, revamping of quiet study expectations and substitute expectations, and additional ways to engage families, positive notes to parents, et cetera. I know that Kyle and Laura have also been talking, and I think they're meeting again tomorrow to really look at how to align some things. And then, as I mentioned, Chief Walden, he's available on the 13th. It looks like all of our administrators are available, so we're hoping to meet on the 13th. I sent the text, and I think it's fine. And then I'll provide additional updates to that as well. I know there's I'm going to talk to you about exchange of information, both ways. The police are wonderful, and they're very supportive and help us. And if there's ways that we can better help them, and then also find out if there's a situation that we might not know about to help us. So any questions or any things that haven't been mentioned or addressed? And again, I know I'm talking about
Didn't want to interrupt you, I'll give her a go.
middle school, but a lot of this we'll be looking at in other areas as well.
When we're engaging the parents on this, I'll be honest, like I've heard the conversations while I'm sitting waiting for UPK drop off between parents about this stuff. Are we engaging them on it, how they think we could do better? Like what some of the root causes behind this are? Like I understand we're dealing with hey, this occurred, this is what we need to do, but are we able to work back to really, like for me with troubleshooting would be the 5 whys. Are we really working back far enough on why this is starting to begin with versus just, how to stem the behavior at the end? Because a lot of times this is something that starts and is progressing through 5, 6, 7 steps before it explodes.
Mhm.
And it's, how do we start to work far enough back that we're able to make a difference? Because a lot of cases, once the ball's rolling, stopping it at the end is really, really difficult.
So
So I think that means like beyond adding 5 to 8 social workers and psychologists and behavioral specialists in each building, right? Beyond that?
Yeah, beyond that.
So one of the things, and again, and when I bring up Rachel Marshall, it's not that Rachel Marshall's doing it all, it's that she's the role is a perfect role to help in this area and work with parents and students and teachers. So one of the things that we started talking about was some focus groups, and that could be led by principals, it could be led by Rachel, that might be
And that could be a fun, like a
to
good opportunity to also reach out to the community, reach out to families, just an open forum that obviously within reason, you can have real discussions about what some of the problems are and how we can help address them as a partner in the fight. Because obviously, yes, there's a lot of this stuff that happens in the community and then just we happen to catch the tail end of it at school.
So that is one of the key parts of the mental health grant, right? Figuring out ways to engage parents, figuring out ways to provide resources. So, and let's face it, the survey, we didn't get very great responses, but phone calls or asking to come in and talk. I do know Abram Lansing is part of the plan is having some parents come in. I'm not sure of the date, but that's a conversation too with a certain protocol. So definitely something. And I heard that 5 whys from somebody on a tape recently, and I can't remember who. And but 5 whys.
So are you saying that we need to reach out to the parents and say, hey, what's going on in your house and why is your kid misbehaving?
No, I'm not saying on a personal level. I'm saying more on a holistic level of truly reaching out to parents, and asking for their thoughts on, you know, like what's going on outside of this building, what supports can we provide from the school level? Really more.
It's kind of like asking them to join a committee or,
Like, yeah, no, honestly, it kind of is.
I mean,
Because it's just, you know,
we're having them come to a board meeting.
we have very similar thoughts within the school. I mean, sometimes it's just, you need someone who has a different perspective
Yeah, no, I know.
to the group. It's diversity of thought, not just.
Absolutely, I mean, and absolutely the people that you really want to get coming to these meetings or going to the school with the problems that their children are having are the ones that are having the problems. And we all know that, you know, that's like the hardest thing to ever do. But I also think that like, I really, I mean, I think that our schools are definitely try to engaging with the parents and getting their involvement. Are you saying like when they're in the pickup line, should there be like a questionnaire that goes out to them? Something like that?
Honestly,
Like,
I think
that's how you mentioned,
initially,
like,
I'm thinking more of sometimes like the open forum or something like that, where people can just come in and have a real conversation and sort of goes where it goes, whether it's small focus groups, whether it goes from there. It's just to start the conversation, and then you'll find some people are more willing to continue the conversation versus if the start of the conversation is, hey, your kid did this, sometimes
I
that
know.
conversation takes a nosedive real quick.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, honestly, on a leadership level of the school principals, they should definitely be reaching out to the parents in their schools to find out what the pulse of their community is.
So there's the collection of that information that was going to give us a little more insight or more direct insight and what the partnerships that we need to facilitate or even reach out to that we haven't thought of.
So one of the things, and this has been a conversation with Kyle and Laura, but I don't want to commit them to it because I don't know if they've committed to it yet, but they have talked about, you know, potential coffee hours, maybe to have people come in.
Which is a great idea, and I think that's what your suggestion is, just like having, you know, open times.
Tell them they have to do at least one.
I think it's important for us to look at, you know, the goal versus
Right.
the outcome,
Yeah.
right? So we set goals and, you know, we use data to set goals and we have to be able to reflect on all different parts in order to actually achieve results. So, you know, we're looking at achievement data, like, are we doing better? Are there numbers that show us that we're doing better? How do we get that? Do we break it down and see where our areas of weakness are in order to support that? what programs in place do we have or do we need to put in place? And then what is the perception data? Like, so as our BLTs are setting goals, it's important to go through this entire process of making sure we're looking at all four of those things. Like, what is the problem? Who is the problem? How do we solve it? And what do people think the problem actually is and what it is not? And without us communicating that out to the community, that's where you run into the pickup line and you don't have, productive conversations because they don't actually have an awareness of how things in a school district run or what we've already done, to address this issue. So without those communication pieces, the perception won't change. And the likelihood of us having participation at something like an open coffee hour or forum, it is very minimal. So if we don't put ourselves out there by saying, we've got a perception issue and finding out what that is, then we are never going to be able to achieve that ultimate goal of whatever improvement we decide we need to make.
Well, and I do also think that coming off of a pandemic and, like having you not being able to stand 5 feet next to a person or whatever, we definitely, I feel like this school year, we have a great opportunity to just open our doors and say, we are open, we are welcome. You put it in the code of conduct that visitors are welcome, stuff like that. I really think that that's the message that needs to get out in the school year is that.
A friend who's got a 4th grader who has never been asked to come into school.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, think about before, we were always in the schools, we were always volunteering, you always had a parent, a room parent and stuff like that.
Gets tapped on the shoulder because
Right.
they know that you show up and you do everything, but
Yeah.
it limits the exposure of all of our parents to be able to have the same experience.
Yeah,
Have the same experience of what the school means. Like, we want to build that partnership, then we have to allow them to participate.
yeah,
So there are many pieces, multiple pieces. I like the idea of keeping asking why, digging deeper. This all centers around also not just behavior, but community and parent engagement.
absolutely.
I don't know if this ties in or not, but I do want to let you know that I began having conversations, with our district communication, and we're starting to explore analytics for our different sites and who, what are the numbers and what are our followers. So for example, we have 3,900 followers on Facebook in the last 90 days versus on Instagram, 1,391 followers. But beyond that, looking at ways community members can also sign up for Parent Square. We're starting to explore that. So looking at ways to increase the conversations and communication with our parents, but also the community. So to see what's the most effective, we're starting to explore, would Twitter be effective? Would it not? Or is that too old now? Is there something else that Dan knows about that I don't know about? But just looking at all of that too. So tying in the communication, the behavior, the academics, the parent engagement, it all should be part of
I mean, I'll just give you, for instance, like I just had a person over the weekend say that they didn't realize that like you can visit hospitals now. So I think the communication out there has to be that,
Do it.
exactly. We're open, come on in. We're going to start, not even start, we're going to resume, doing all of these things that we did before. You're going to have a room parent, you're going to do this, you're going to have volunteers, you're going to start doing, the evening like book club where the kids come in their pajamas and, buy books and stuff like that. Like those are the things that need to get the community and the parents back into the schools and involved.
Thank you. Anything else?
I'll figure out how to work this all into
Yep, a plan.
Power.
You could have that to us by Thursday, that'd be great.
I would like it on PowerPoint.
9:30 is acceptable.
Oh, I have two, just very quick slides.
Maybe.
Yep, So upcoming events, so the study tutoring program for elementary students has started. This is open to all elementary students. There's a limited number of tutors. These are all teachers who are working on their masters in reading through the University of Albany. So students are invited to attend. And then on July 10th, it's our first day of summer programming throughout the district, and we're excited to be able to walk around and see smiling faces. And then at all of those programs, breakfast and lunch are provided, but also free breakfast and lunch for all Cohoes students, both at the middle school and the high school, the 2 different sites. And we'll be getting this out if it hasn't gone out already through Parent Square and through, I believe this went out on social media, right, on social media, but through Parent Square as well, and then putting up signs.
So as a community eligibility district, we are allowed to offer to residents, not just city school district employees or students. Like, it should be any school age resident, so not just the whole city school district.
So
Our CEP,
Yeah.
while you bring up CEP, our CEP expired, so we reapplied district-wide. They did, initially the deadline was 6:30, but they extended it to the end of the summer, but we've already applied and sent the back.
I'll talk with Brian and,
I just wanted to make sure, like, in the past, it has been,
yeah, we'll
Yeah.
talk
Yeah.
with Brian Nolan and repeat with Mary Beth to change the reminders. Good catch.
So it shouldn't just say Cohoes City School District students, is what you're saying?
Student,
Should just say any
Sure.
resident,
any resident.
student resident of Cohoes.
That's all.
Any Board of Education discussion of agenda items?
Well, I will say that I'm going, if you need to know that I'm going to do the facilities again, which I would imagine.
Yeah,
You said you needed to know, so.
yes.
And I'll email you for potential August dates, because that's what CSR Chin Turner has.
So policy, any new takers on policy? On now. Mrs. Carey will be up.
and then we can, when Mrs. Gendron is here at the next meeting, and she chooses the participant, then we can have her.
And then-
Yep.
Rest will be on next meeting's agenda, so just come in knowing which of these ways you would like to spend your free time.
What if we all pick the same 2 committees?
Great question.
Who decides?
Well, pretty much like, it's like,
So it's the first.
Yeah.
yeah,
Like a draft.
yeah, I mean,
Maybe step aside to make.
if you wanted to go
Really
on.
want- Okay,
And once we know who's on all the committees, that's when we then do the dates so that
gotcha.
spreads out throughout the year, so it's not that.
Okay.
When we
Yeah,
get.
'cause-
Right.
So actually, Mr. Taylor pointed out, I think, that we can't have a quorum. So more than half of us can't be on any given committee, otherwise there's a quorum and it's another side of.
Gotcha.
Then we become a decision-making body and we can do that. I just wanted to bring up, I know that we are looking at the recommendation to approve the merger for the Cohoes wrestling program. I know I say this every year, and I'm gonna say it again. I really hope that they consider having Cohoes as part of their uniform and or representation in some way to say that these are Cohoes students. We've done similar with our swimming team, and I believe that was minimal cost to our budget.
So can I ask, is there a reason, I mean, does Waterville pay for the uniforms? Do we not like,
I don't think that we pay. I'm gonna have to ask Jeff so that I don't misspeak, and I'll ask him about that too, and then I'll communicate it in an update. And
yeah, because I mean, if we have one child that's on the Shenandoah, well,
that's,
Cohoes / Shenandoah diving team, and she's represented with a Cohoes uniform, like why?
So that's a little different because, and again, I want to talk.
I know the different,
We appoint that coach as a volunteer
Right.
coach. And so that's not a merger. In this case, it's a merger with Waterville and Green Island, but I'll ask about the uniforms and things.
Yeah, there's certainly a perception out there that we do not contribute anything toward that program. And so if that's the case, then I think that we need to have a discussion as to, number one, why we are not contributing to that program, but also what we can do to help support our Cohoes athletes.
Mrs. Keller, from me asking, I know you worked so long with the wrestling
Yeah.
programs. Do you think there's resistance coming from a particular entity? We can even have an offline conversation about it, but,
Yeah, I don't
or
think-
just it hasn't been brought up enough.
We don't know. if
I
it's been
don't know
passed.
what this is.
Okay, I just want to make sure no one's working against this.
I don't.
Okay,
I haven't had the conversation with Jeff,
Yeah.
and so
Okay.
I'll have the conversation with Jeff and then go from there.
Any other agenda related comments? Community agenda items, comments, questions, concerns? Thanks, Bruce. Can we get a motion that the Board of Education adopts the following resolutions on the July 6th business agenda? Items 6A through P, 7A through D, and item 10.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
a second.
Thank you.
Mrs. Carey,
Yeah.
Mr. Jackson,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Paredes,
Yes.
Mr. Droz.
Yes.
Mrs. Giller.
Yes.
Thank you. Any comments from members of the board on anything that's not on the agenda?
I just want to say that it's going to be a little weird not seeing you all till August.
We're good.
It'd be all right. You just see me, just head over to Berkeley Park. I'll be at the expo.
How we remember those.
Oh my God, I was looking at I just,
Be in touch and.
I actually do want to just say something actually more in reference of the code of conduct in that it needs to be reviewed with the heads of our schools, the principals and everything for a code of conduct for distributed to all events. I think that we need to, as administrators and as leading by example, that I think like Laura Tarlow does an awesome job of just like keeping her school in line and doing things and the kids and stuff like that. And I think it just, at the heads of your school, and it trickles down. So that's all I'm saying about like the code of conduct for like the leaders of our schools for all activities that are public, that they need to just be more refined.
Any comments from the audience on anything that's not on the agenda?
thank you for keeping me gainfully employed, and I'll continue to work hard for
Oh,
you.
yeah.
Oh, that's right.
All right, just a note that the policy committee has met. We've done a first read. We did a second read and adopted this evening all of these policies from the financial series. So thank you again, Ms. Snacky, for going through all of those line by line.
Could I just mention the next round, is the technology policies and also some facilities policies that we haven't finished up.
Don't let that stop you from joining.
I know.
All right, the dates for the future meetings, as Ms. O'Shea said, we're not having a second meeting in July. We're gonna have two in August, so the next meeting is August 9th, August 30th, both here, 6 PM. Can we get a motion to enter into executive session at 7:26 PM to discuss the evaluation of Superintendent O'Shea?
I'll make the motion.
And contract.
And contract of the evaluation and contract of superintendent.
I'm sorry, who second?
I second.
Carrie,
Yeah.
Jackson,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Ms. Paredes,
Yes.
Mr. Rose,
Yes.
Ms. Giller.
Yes.
That's it.